Filmmaker and minimalist Matt D'Avella recently put up a YouTube video entitled "The Real Truth About Chasing Your Dreams." And it came at the perfect time because just before I was going to start making this video, I felt like there were a few holes in everything that I was thinking about, which is how do I manage to make myself so miserable sometimes as a creative person? And Matt's video really helped gel some of these ideas, and he brought a few other things to the table that I'm really excited to sort of bring together in a big soup of thoughts that I have. This is something that is, it's a big thing for me that I think about a lot. If you're not careful about how you think about what you do on a daily basis, on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, always putting it into a healthy, proper perspective, you can easily get mired in some pretty dark thinking, a mode of looking at things that is a kind of a zero-sum game that is going to make you miserable. And I've been there many times and picked myself up out of that hole and always wondered, why do I end up there? How do I end up back in this space? And how do I stop doing that? At this point, I feel like I've got a good handle on why it happens. And I think I've also got a good handle on how to overcome those feelings and those challenges when they do come up and move myself forward into a more positive space. So I wanted to share some of that with you. So one of the things that Matt was talking about in his video, The Real Truth About Chasing Your Dreams, is this idea of a 3-year rule, which is that in order to understand whether something works or not, a new project or a new creative endeavor or anything else, you have to spend about 3 years working at it to see any kind of progress. And in his video, he interviews a pair from Australia who are a podcasting team, so he tracked their progress, and during this video, he interviews them. And one of the interesting things that came out of it was he asked them, like, how do you feel about where you are now looking back 3 years? And what they said was, well, you know, ultimately, we thought we'd be a lot further ahead. Wow, I so relate to that. Reflecting back on everything that's happened, and mind you, I've been at this for 16 years now, is I thought I would be way further ahead than where I am. One of the things that reminded me of is Atomic Habits. And in Atomic Habits, James Clear puts up this graph. And the graph is basically progress and the things you're achieving, or how well you are doing at a certain habit, or how much your skill is improving. And then of course the bottom line is over time. And the surprising thing is that as you apply sort of constant effort into a certain habit or a skill or whatever it is that you're pursuing, that compounding effect, and this is what he was really talking about, the compounding effect of habit, is a very slow rise at the beginning. You see almost no upward trend until the very end, and then it just scoops up. It's an exponential thing. As you compound interest on top of that habit, on top of that skill, it's really the tail end where that really starts to go zooming up, and you see that real quantum leap from barely seeing any improvement at all, and then suddenly seeing this big upward jump. And I think that's kind of where these two were at, these two podcasters. They had spent 3 years working at their craft, improving what they were doing, building their audience, all these other things. And I still think 3 years is not enough time. For me, I think the magic number is 10 years, which seems insane, but that is what I've seen again and again. And all the people I've ever talked to, it is about a 10-year process to really get to where you are seeing some significant gains. But what's interesting is, even if you do hit that exponential curve, and I feel like I'm in that uprise in my own career, where you land or where you are in that process of that rise is not guaranteed. There is no like set, this is where you'll end up. Put a certain amount of effort in, show up every day, be super talented, all the other things that go into having a career of any kind. There is no guarantee of anything. So that then brings me to the original idea I had, which came up while I was listening to Steven Pressfield on Tim Ferriss. For those of you who've been living under a rock and don't know who Steven Pressfield is, he is the author of The War of Art, which is a book all about the creative struggle and why we have it and how to break through those blocks. And his basic thesis is this: there is this thing called the resistance with a capital R. And it's basically the thing that prevents us from achieving our dreams, the thing that prevents us from getting down to work, the reason why we procrastinate, the reason why we self-sabotage. There's something deep inside us that doesn't want us to take chances, to work on this creative thing, to, express ourselves at some fundamental level. Tim was asking, why does the resistance exist? What is the biological imperative of this? Why would we still have this thing? It doesn't seem to really serve us in any way. And what Steven started to talk about was something that I found really interesting. He started talking about the Jungian ideas of ego versus the self, and then this thing that he called the divine ground or the divine, which he believes is this sort of like higher power, or this realm that we travel to or that we access when we are being creative and we are being the most truthful to ourselves, when we are in the zone, when we are making something and we are doing the work that we are supposed to be doing. If we just focus on this idea of the ego, this is what I start to think about. What does the ego want? The ego is about chasing status. The ego is about wanting likes and wanting people to validate us and wanting all those external things that tell us you are worthy, that tell us you are doing good work, that tell us keep going, that give us that short-lived feeling that we matter and that what we are doing is meaningful, that make us feel good about ourselves. But why is it always short-lived? Well, because it's not really real. It's well, we would call them vanity metrics, like likes and comments and the amount of followers you have or whatever else. It's not about the work itself. It's not about what you're doing. It's not about the meaning that you're creating or the value you're putting into the world, whatever form that takes. It's about an external reaction to that is really beyond your control in a lot of ways. And just kind of messes things up. When I think about all the reasons why I am miserable or I become miserable in periods of my life, it's because of that. It's because I have focused in on ego. I have forgotten about what Pressfield would refer to as the divine, that sort of joyous thing. For me, it's pure creativity. It's what you tap into when you were a kid. You made up stories in your head and you had amazing worlds that you lived in and played in, and you could create anything. You were a little, for lack of a better word, God within your own world. You made these things, and it's just about pure joy. Why do we do it? I almost want to say, who cares? Because it's such a beautiful place to be, and it's such an important and powerful part of being human. Whenever I'm accessing that realm, whether it's an internal thing, whether it's a true divine, whether it's a God, or however else you want to think about it, it doesn't really matter. When I access that, it's the antithesis of ego. It is a complete dissolution of ego because it's about the forgetting of everything except for the thing that I'm doing in that moment. It's about making music. It's about solving a problem. I guess if you had to go back and think about it, yeah, you could say that was a joyous moment. You're in the flow, but a flow state is almost like this mindless, transcendent kind of moment that you're trying to access all the time. And it is beyond joy, and it is beyond misery, and it is beyond even thinking about anything that is external to you or that needs to validate your existence or what you do or how you do it. These things cease to matter. And the only thing that matters at that point is the work itself, how you're doing it. That's it. That's the whole deal. The other really dangerous thing about that ego-based thinking, when you start to associate what you do with your value as a human, or even more, your identity. Who you are becomes the thing you do. I am a composer. I am this or that. It is so dangerous. And I've only realized this really recently. If I'm not performing in that realm, so if I make a misstep or I'm not doing my best work, or let's say I don't have a gig and I'm not getting work for a period of time, my identity itself is actually threatened. Who I am and why I am valuable in the world becomes threatened. And that to me is unhealthy. And I think I've only very recently realized how unhealthy that is. The other danger is that we have this mythology around the icons of every single industry or creative endeavor or athletic pursuit. There are the Michael Jordans that exist in every field. We start to associate success with that iconography, those archetypes. And it's become so problematic for us. We only think of success as that tiny little sliver at the top, which is so crazy because that is almost unattainable to most people. If you think about 7 billion people on the planet plus, if everyone has the same dream, it's impossible for all of us to be Michael Jordan. And what's sad about that is that there is this whole other section of beauty, of endeavor, of success, of people doing incredible things below that tiny little sliver at the top. And it's a whole range. You could fit anywhere into this. To make it all about that, being the best, being the absolute pinnacle, being the apex, and that's all that you look at in terms of what you deem to be success, you're going to poison yourself with that. And I know that I've done it to myself more than once. The combination of this egoistic thinking about making it about external validation, this need to be the absolute best or to be working in that A+ list, just forgetting how long it takes to do something and to become great at something or to even see any kind of success for the constant efforts you're putting in, and to underestimate how long that will actually take. I mean, this is the source of any misery that I've had in my creative life and my career, is because of falling into that trap over and over again. Here's how I'm starting to think about this and what I want to keep going back to and remember every time I might find myself in this trough. Because we are constantly being blasted with information and blasted with ideas and being pushed to think in a certain way, which is get these things and achieve these things, and this is what success looks like, over and over and over again. Whether it's social media or traditional media or anything else, we are always being reminded that we are not enough. There are too many industries that are built around the idea of making us feel like we're somehow not enough. So what am I doing? Well, the first thing that I'm doing is I am going to remind myself over and over again to fall in love with the work that I am doing, and to remember to practice gratitude that I am getting the chance to work on creative stuff at all. This is a gift. You know, one of my most common comments to emerging composers who are coming up, who are talking about, you know, they're in the trenches, they're trying to get their first student films, or they're working on no or low budget films, and they're like, how do I get to the next level? I have to tell them, look, it's a matter of time, and consistently you just keep showing up, practice some good habits, hopefully you'll get to where you're going. In the meantime, don't forget, really just enjoy this, because I look back at those days fondly. When I would finish my workday and get home, after dinner I would start composing. So around 8 o'clock to about 3 in the morning on a pretty consistent basis, that's what I did. I went home and I worked on music. It wasn't a burden. It wasn't something that I had to force myself to do. I was so excited to get home and work on music. It was a privilege. It was a joy. It doesn't matter what stage you're at or where you are in your career or what level you've gotten to. Remember to fall in love with the work, and it is always a privilege if you have the opportunity to work on creative work, whether it's your own or to work with somebody else, to have the opportunity to get into the zone, to have the opportunity to be creative and express ourselves and help other people express themselves. It's amazing. I always want to remember that it is about the craft, right? So I'm falling in love with a project, and then I'm saying to myself, how can you be the absolute best this time out? What can you do to make this the best project you've ever done, the best music you've ever written, and have been the best collaborator to someone else? When I'm not working on something, what can I do to improve myself, to learn, to keep working on my craft, and to improve? I'm trying to make it less about myself. So instead of worrying all the time about where I'm getting in my career, what I'm getting in return for something, some external validation or some external form of value that seems so important to me, I'm thinking about how can I help other people achieve what they're looking for? How can I be the best collaborator? How can I solve somebody else's problem? Because that is where a lot of the joy for me comes in this work as well. It's the conversations with filmmakers. It's solving those problems. It's looking at the challenge of a film and the challenge of telling a story well. How will we solve it this time? Each outing is going to have its own particular thing, and that's amazing. That is such a wonderful gift as well. And that brings me to the next point, which is to always stay curious. I want to be curious all the time and ask good questions and find out what's driving other people. What do they want? What are their desires? What are their hopes? How can I help them achieve those? That's a real joy as well. So that curiosity will carry me so far, because even if I'm not maybe happy, or if I'm under pressure or challenged, or I'm being pushed in some way, my curiosity is the thing that always sort of brings me back to that center and helps me refocus on what's truly important. I'm trying to live as much as possible within that beautiful world that Stephen Pressfield is describing. Whether you believe in a beyond, in a divine, in gods, or you just think it's the creative higher self and some subconscious that you're accessing, it really doesn't matter. To me, that is such a beautiful place, such a wondrous place to live, that I want to try and access that and be in that place as much as possible. And for me, that means moving away from all the external stuff, all the vanity metrics, all the ego crap that just gets in the way and makes me miserable. I'm trying to remember that this takes a long time, and that curve of improvement and that curve of rise at the end is going to take time, and it's indeterminate. And where I end up is anyone's guess and really up to chance and whatever else. I think that if I maintain focus on the love of the work and the love of collaboration, being curious and helping others, that it doesn't matter anymore whether I achieve the highest pinnacles within my industry or not, whether I become a Michael Jordan or I don't. Because in so many ways, I have no control over that. I can put in all my best work and I can deliver the best thing that I can possibly deliver. It still might not cut it. It still might not be enough, or I might just not get lucky enough in that way. And maybe that's fine. I want to make sure that no matter where I end up, that the reason why I am not miserable is because of all the things that I have done and where I've put my focus and what I've said is important. Anyways, hit me in the comments and let me know where you're at in your journey with your career, with your creative work. Do these things that I've been talking about, do they affect you? Do they make you miserable? And what do you do to combat that? What do you come back to? What is your true north? What helps you get you out of those slumps, out of those creative and personal misery holes that you might have dug yourself into? I wish that you too can live within Steven Pressfield's magical divine ground and find that inspiration always. Be in touch with the muse and be able to express yourself at your creative highest. Thanks for watching.